Bob's your uncle. Here we go. All right. Before we dive into Kenosha fully and what's happened since everything has kicked off, what I want to do is just kind of look at this from the large scale of what this really means in this time. And apologies to those that on YouTube had some technical difficulties getting rolling, but we are connected now, so we are good to go. All right, so Jacob Blake, just minor background. Jacob Blake was breaking up a fight. And I'm not going to show the video, but he was walking around the vehicle. The cops, if I recall correctly, it 6 or 7 cops were kind of in a line, like follow the leader sort of thing, if you kind of picture it in that sense, and just kind of following him around the car. And then he walks to the car, opens the door, and I mean, you can kind of tell where this is going to end up going anyway. And so he opens up the door, and as he's leaning into the door, cops shoot him 7 times in the back. He survived. He's in the hospital. He was in handcuffs for, I believe, 2 days. He had a bail of $500, which means that it was a $10,000. I mean, excuse me, bad math, which means it was a $5,000 bond. So basically, the way the bond system works is, for cash bonds, it's going to be a 10% fee, basically. Generally, it sometimes can be higher if you've been a bail jumper or things like that. They can decide to just say, if you don't have the full bond, then you stay in jail. So they ended up bonding him. The cops left the hospital and they uncuffed him. Why he was cuffed, not really sure. So all of the stories and the reports of what's been going on there prior to that day was that he was breaking up a fight. So there was a fight that was going on, and between neighbors, he broke up the fight. And word is the cops got there, got a little physical with him, or confrontational. Let me not say physical, confrontational with him. And in the confrontation, he ended up, I guess, just saying, you know what, I'm done with this. And he walks off and the cops shoot him, right? So that's that. The next thing, and the video was shot from some people across the street. They were the ones shooting the video from, looks like an upper window. So there's not a lot of audio. It's not very clear exactly what was being said. It starts at the point of like a couple seconds before Jacob Blake starts moving about, or moving around to the car. But he did it calmly. Like, he just walked off like, man, I'm done with this sort of thing, and just like walk into the car. But I don't know what he said. I don't know what he said. Don't know what happened before then. We don't have the video. I haven't seen anything contradictory to the point of him being there to break up a fight, or him being violent in any sort of way beyond breaking up the fight. And the kicker is his kids were in the car. And so they fired 7 shots into the vehicle with his kids in the car. So this, from the police angle, I mean, I don't think there's really much defense that you can give. From the point of him entering or opening up the car door, you could argue that the police were unsure what was possibly going to be happening once he opened the door. Was he going to open the door, grab a weapon, and attack the cops? So there was a knife in the car, and they found it after. And this kind of goes to where we're going with this conversation. Knife was found in the car after the shooting. There's not been an indication that the cops saw a knife and then shot. And of course, it's follow the leader, right? Because The cop that's right behind him shoots. And then of course the cop number 2 in the line, he just starts shooting, right? Like knee jerk, I'm gonna shoot too. And I don't know if the third one shot or not, but the first 2 did for sure. So when you hear the story, they say he had a knife in the car. Okay, so there's a meme that's going around from Trevor Noah, and it basically speaks not to this point, but the quote is relevant to this. It states that saying there was a knife in the car, I'm using it in this analogy, and I'll break apart to his statement. Saying there's a knife in the car and the cops shot him makes people believe that they shot him because there was a knife in the car and he was going for it. That would be equivalent to saying Bruce Lee died in the Vietnam War. And the funny part of it is, like, yeah, he died in 1973. The war was going on, but he wasn't in Vietnam, right? So it's like 2 different pieces of information that you're using to try to paint something as something that it's not, right? And so the framing, largely what the thought is for this episode is framing, right? What is the framing telling you, right? People on the right tend to say that the media is leading us into believing something or controlling our lives, right? And they're saying this about, like, as in they're woke, quote unquote, they're awake, let me say, not woke in that sense, but they're awake, and they're not letting the media mislead them. But they are, just like the left. There's no distinction between how the media is misleading you. It just depends on which source you're reading or watching or what memes you're looking at. So I have a lot of conversations with people on the right, and a lot of memes that get shared, and on the left, let me clarify, a lot of memes that get shared are just outright not factual, right? Like, that's not the nature of why the meme exists anyway. And when I combat them with the facts of it, it's like, oh, the media this, the media that. No, like, I can give you, like, here's the data, here's the details, here's whatever the case may be. And the conversation usually dead ends with them diverging into something else. But the reason they believe what they believe is because they were informed to believe that. So back into Kenosha, whenever you hear that there was a knife in the car, your thought is, oh, he was reaching for a knife. And that's what they want you to think. That's what they want you to believe, right? So from this, riots break out. Well, let me properly frame that. Protests begin. And then from those protests, here come the riots. So, and well, I don't know if they actually deemed it a riot. And I think sometimes we're using riot a little too loosely. Vandalism began and property destruction. I don't know how closely you want to follow the riot definition, but maybe it did fit that bill. I didn't specifically look to see if they deemed those protests as a riot, but I do know the initial ones were not a riot. So from there, the next phase of, once it goes into riot mode, it's, I don't recall, maybe 2-3 days. And then this is when the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting happens. And I'm not going to dive fully into that until Mike gets on the line, because we had an internal debate in our chat about not necessarily the legality, but parsing the situation there. And I'd rather do that with him on the line than go alone, because part of this episode was largely for us just to debate that aspect. But I just want to give you the color commentary before we get there and start going through that, right? So Kyle Rittenhouse is a 17-year-old boy or man, and he is at the place where they're basically at a gas station. They're protecting this area. And he ends up at the end of the night, he ends up shooting one person, Joseph Rosenbaum. Joseph Rosenbaum dies almost immediately. He got shot in the head. Then Kyle gets on the phone, calls somebody, and says, "I just killed someone." And then he takes off running down the road. Obviously, other protesters are around, and they start yelling, "He just killed somebody." So as he's running down the street, somebody says, "Get him." They use a little colorful language. And then yelling, "Get him." People try to go tackle him. He shoots two more people. People decide at that point, yeah, we're not going to get him anymore. We're just going to move away and hope not to get shot. He killed one of the other two, blew the third one's like in between the top part of your elbow, basically between your bicep and your forearm, blew that completely off. I believe it was an AR that he had. And the that gentleman had a gun as well, had a pistol. And he chose not to shoot Kyle. And then, according to a Facebook post, and then he makes a step forward, kind of like advancing to Kyle, and Kyle shoots him, hits him in the arm. And then once they leave him alone, then he takes off running down the street. The cops are at the end of this street. They're not doing anything about any of it. They're maybe 50 yards away. And then he runs to the cops. The cops tell him basically get out the road, and then he ends up later on getting in a car and driving back home. Kyle lives about, from what I've heard, about 30 minutes away from Kenosha, or 30 miles, excuse me. So 15, 20 minutes, maybe. And so I don't know the area, but I just liken it to like any metropolitan area where you drive 30 minutes, you're still in the city, right? So the other two that were shot later in the night, they lived about 30 to 40 minutes away or miles away as well. And so they all came into Kenosha for whatever the reason. And that's what we're going to be discussing. So that's largely those aspects. Now, we're going to come back to that. Like I mentioned, we'll come back to what was going on there. But from there is a large rift between the left and the right. And it ends up weirdly breaking along racial guidelines, which is odd because the four people who are involved here, three of them are white. I think the one guy may be of some sort of Hispanic origin, but I don't know, he may be white as well. And so it's weirdly, it's really not weirdly broken across racial lines to me, but just the disconnect there that ends up breaking it across racial lines is the part to me that it's just odd. It's illogical to me. And I just don't think people are really considering what is actually happening there because they're looking at the broad strokes, right? So the very first time I heard about this was from I guess he would call himself a liberal. At least I believe he would call himself a Democrat. Let's just say that. And so he basically said a white supremacist shot or killed two people in Kenosha last night. And this was on Twitter. And my initial comment was, Have we confirmed that? And then it starts coming out that Kyle is a Trump supporter, and he was sitting largely front row with within one of Trump's rallies recently. And so obviously, what does that do? Trump supporter kills 2 people, boom. Right there, you have decided whether or not it was a good or bad kill. Doesn't matter the facts. Doesn't matter what actually happened. You haven't watched the video. And I'm speaking to all of you who just outright said Kyle is, you know, a murderer, or that Kyle was innocent. You may have caught a clip. You didn't see any backstory. You end up hearing who he shot, and you're like, oh, they deserved it. And it's all based on identity. And this is why I keep saying identity politics is not just an issue on the left. That's not what it is. Identity politics has always been here. It is not new. This entire thing is based on identity, straight up. So when the identity came out about this, basically what ends up happening is people pick and choose, and they decide this is what's going to happen, right? Or this is what we are. This is what we're doing. So that right there is part of where we are in America. And that's one of the biggest problems with having a discussion about any of these things, because at that point, you're not paying attention to really what's going on. You're just taking these individual situations, and you're just like, this is what it is. It was a Trump supporter, he's guilty. Or there's a Trump supporter, he's innocent. But let's flip it. Trump supporters, my brethren, my sisterin, who are Trump supporters, if Kyle was the one who was killed that night, and he was killed in the exact same manner that Kyle killed Rittenhouse or Rosenbaum, would you say that the protester or whoever that killed Kyle was innocent in the exact same way? And that's the rub of this entire situation. Is, would you truly and honestly state that in the exact same way? This is a protester who is there, Black Lives Matter, geared out 100%. You can see him. They now have signs of him. He has full Black Lives Matter hat, shirt, you know, I can't breathe, you know, all these other, you know, statements and things on his body and his clothing and all this sort of stuff. Still feel the same way? All of my 2A folks, love our guns. Are you defending this protester if he kills Kyle in the exact same way? Or does that change? And now all of a sudden, maybe not, he's wrong. Right? So this is where this largely boils down to identity. And people tend to think of identity as along racial lines, but it's not. It's not just racial. It's not. We got Mike joining us right now.
What's going on?
What's going on, brother?
Oh, you know, just grinding it out here, trying to make $1 out of 99 cents.
I hear that. So what I was going through, Mike, real quick was just backstory. You know, I kind of let folks know that you had some things going on, and we were getting you dialed in. But just backstory of what went on with Jacob Blake, and then the high level, not digging into the details of what went on with Rittenhouse, with Kyle Rittenhouse, and just the people who were shot, when they were shot, the high level parts of the events, not specifically what was going on. So I was waiting on you for that specific part. And then asking people to think about flipping this, that if it wasn't a Trump supporter, how would you feel about this? And if it was a protester that shot Kyle in the exact same way he shot Rosenbaum, how would you feel about this? Just that politically free mindset thinking aspect of it, to kind of frame this discussion. Right, so let's dig into the specifics. And Mike is on the phone, so I'm not going to show any video and of it, but we've all seen it. I'll link to the videos, the content that we have in the show notes. So just visit politicalfreeagents.com. You can catch all of that. All right, so Mike, we have Kyle Rittenhouse, young man, 17. There's a video of him that he's speaking to somebody, giving him an interview. He says, I'm here basically to provide support. He has a med kit strapped to him with a kind of harness, over the shoulder harness. And then he has an AR. I think it's an AR, right?
Yeah, an AR style.
Right.
Rifle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so he has the AR.
I don't know which one it was, but yeah.
Right. Yeah. And so he has that kind of strapped, over the shoulder harness kind of thing as well in front of him. And then there's also video leading up to the shooting of some people. It looks like protesters. I'm not really sure. But there was basically two groups of people here. There was a bunch of people that were heavily armed, a bunch of people who were not heavily armed, but there were definitely some guns in the crowd, mostly pistols that I saw. And so these people that were walked into like this parking lot area with Kyle, they were actually, what I would assume were protesters, right? So walk in there, Kyle's calling them in, telling anybody else, hey, if you have any injuries, come in here, and trying to render aid, basically, right? Fast forward, they're at the gas station. There's basically two sides. You got all the people with the guns on one side, and then you got all the other protesters and folks on the other side. And there's some tension there, but there's not any physical confrontation at this point. This is where Joseph Rosenbaum, from what I've seen, I haven't seen any footage prior to this of Joseph. Joseph is the first person who was shot. This is where Joseph comes into the picture. And the clip that everybody was sharing was Joseph saying, shoot me in, shoot me in. I'm about this. If you want to bust on me, all this other, random, puffing his chest out. Probably a little bit of little man syndrome. He's like 5'3", short guy. And he's just, boasting about how tough he is, sort of thing. The part that I've seen that people are skipping is what happened right prior to that, that video. And right prior to that, there was a dumpster that was literally a dumpster fire, like not figuratively speaking. There was a dumpster fire that they set, and they were trying to push this dumpster. You can't tell because it gets extinguished. A guy like kind of funnily, to me is funny, just walks by with an extinguisher and just like, and puts out the dumpster fire. Joseph was one of the people who were pushing the dumpster. They were pushing it down the street, but I couldn't tell if they were trying to push it towards the people with the guns or if they were pushing it towards the cops who were in the direction that they were going. So that's when Joseph starts with like really escalating and showing his anger about something. And you can't tell what specifically happened, but that's when he starts going in on people initially. And then you start hearing people saying, why did you do that? Why did he do that? And I'm just not sure. I don't know if you've seen anything else on that part of it, Mike, but why did he do that? I don't know if they're talking about the fire extinguisher with the guy putting out the fire in the dumpster, or if or if somebody did something else, like brandish the weapon at him or something like that. Because there was definitely a guy there that looked very nervous, like firecrackers were popping off and he was spinning in a circle, like, like, who do I shoot? Like, he was, okay, dude, you need to get in the back. Like, go get back in the truck, because he's very, very high nervous. So that's when Joseph enters the picture. And then from there, from the dumpster fire part, is when you see the argument, or the Joseph kind of trying to push through the crowd to get to somebody. I can't tell who he's trying to get to. It's a bunch of movement. There's 2 or 3 angles from this different shot. I mean, this different situation. And then we don't have any video until Kyle is running. And so that piece of the situation is what we're missing. And we don't know specifically. Once Joseph gets shot, and I'm gonna come back a little bit, but once Joseph gets shot in the video, you can see there's somebody rendering aid to Joseph. I forget his name. I don't know if you remember his name, Mike, but that guy was the guy that actually spoke to the cops and gave the record of what he saw happen. So leading up to the shooting, the record that the police have from this guy who rendered aid to Rosenbaum said Rosenbaum, who was the shooting victim, was trying to get to Kyle, who was the shooter. Kyle was on one side, and they were kind of like walking in and out of the cars, heading down the street. Rosenbaum's trying to get to Kyle. Kyle's moving to the other side of the cars. Rosenbaum moves to the other side. Kyle moves back to the sidewalk. And then I guess Rosenbaum picked up steam, and Kyle decided to stop playing Frogger in and out of the cars and took off running. This is where the video starts. And the video shows and Kyle running towards, like, into this parking lot, in between these cars. Rosenbaum throws something at Kyle, and it looks like a paper bag. The memes that are being shared is it was a Molotov cocktail. It wasn't. It was like a shirt, bag, something. And then you hear a pop. That's not Kyle. There's a pop that's happening. There's somebody behind them with the gun. I can't tell if it's him that shot, or if it was somebody over to the left of the cars that shot, or if it was more fireworks. Somebody said that I did see someone say that there was a muzzle flash that I believe the New York Times pulled out that was behind Kyle. So Kyle's running, going between the cars. Rosenbaum catches up to him at this point. At that point, the word is that Rosenbaum, this is from the guy who rendered aid to Rosenbaum, was trying to reach for Kyle's gun and tried to grab the barrel. Kyle had it pointed low. And throughout all this, I think, Mike, you attest to this as well, Kyle had pretty good gun control, right? Like, he wasn't walking around with his finger on the trigger, right? Like, he had it pointed down. He wasn't brandishing it wildly at people that we've seen in video. So
yeah, I would definitely agree that everything that I saw in all the videos leads me to believe that this wasn't the first time he's ever walked around with a quote unquote assault rifle style weapon, or really any weapon for that matter. He had great trigger control and manipulation of the firearm. He knew, he had very clear muzzle awareness. So I would say, just based off of what I saw, that he's been handling firearms for, a decent amount of time, enough to where he has all of those little things kind of wired into his head already, as far as how to manipulate a firearm responsibly and properly. So yeah, I would say that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And even later on, which we'll get into, his control was pretty impressive. Like, you can't even lie in that sort of situation. And so Rosenbaum reaches for the barrel of the gun. I don't know if he misses or what, but Kyle basically is able to swing it up enough to fire off a round. The guy that was right there at the scene said he heard 3 pops, and he thinks the first one bounced off the ground, hit his leg because he felt like some pavement or something, and he thought he was shot. He wasn't, though. And then there's 2 other pops, but he wasn't sure specifically, where the rounds went. So the shot fires off, the one that actually hits Rosenbaum. Rosenbaum collapses right there. Kyle runs around the car and then back into the light of the parking lot. And he runs over there to Joseph. And then that's when a bunch of other people, the gentleman who was actually talking to the cops is at that point taking off his shirt, rendering aid. And then Kyle is standing there and he pulls out his phone and gets on the phone and calls somebody. Somebody said it was his mom. Somebody said it was a friend. Don't know. Doesn't matter. But he says, I just killed someone. Other protesters start running up to to Rosenbaum, and they start yelling at Kyle, get the F out of here. And he starts moving away and then takes off running. Right. All right. So we'll stop here. That's kind of generally the flow of the structure. And then we'll go into the next 2 shootings that follow there. Did I miss anything, Mike? Tried to lay out the general scene.
Yeah, I think it's really, I think we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't kind of add a little more to the background of this whole situation, right? So,
all right.
So in general, what I've been seeing, and I think what a lot of people have been seeing over the last weeks and months, is that when it comes to these quote unquote protests, right, especially these protests at night, when large crowds start to gather, these protests a lot of times are turning into riots, where businesses are being damaged and destroyed. People are acting out violently against other people. And so as a backdrop to this specific situation, because I can almost guarantee you that Kyle has been seeing this play out over in other areas of the country just through the media and social media. And so in his mind, he has already established a baseline as to how things could go if he were to put himself in a situation where he's going to go, protect property and render aid in a potential, protest or riot situation, right? So he's probably already seen how things can turn violent very quickly against other people and businesses and property. So that mindset needs to be established, that he has probably already seen that, maybe not personally, but if he's going to go somewhere, he's at least aware that that is a very real possibility, which is why he says he took the weapon with him for personal protection, right? So if you're going to go and you're going to try and render aid to people, and you're going to have to go and pull people out, like, you're rendering aid because why? Because somebody has done something violent to somebody else, right? So if you're going to go render aid to somebody, you're already putting yourself in a violent situation because you're trying to remove somebody from a violent situation. So that's why he brought the weapon with him, for personal protection. Now, we can go into the whole, like, whether or not it was legal for him to have it or not. Either way, I think is a little beside the point. Either way, he decided to take something for personal protection. And so we need to kind of establish that whole overall background into, before he got there. This is probably his mindset. And then, per his own words and the video of why he was there in the first place, he clearly stated that he was not there to act out in a violent way. He was there to protect people and property. So now, a lot of times what happens is, when you're protecting people and property with firearms, you're kind of doing it in a show of force manner. So, it's a lot like when you're in the military, right? When you walk around with a weapon, with a gun, you are essentially stating that I have the ability to act out in a violent manner with this weapon should you threaten me, right? Or threaten my life, or threaten,
Right.
the property that I'm protecting. So, as far as the way the timeline that the timeline of events that you're describing, when you say that they had a dumpster fire that they were pushing around. Now if you're there to protect people and property, if you've got a large group of people at night who are starting dumpster fires and pushing that something like a dumpster full of fire around, now you can take that as a threat to people because a dumpster weighs a lot. So, especially if it's on fire, you could easily harm a person. My initial reaction would be that they were pushing around a dumpster that was on fire to push it into some sort of larger object, right? Maybe a store, a building, maybe a car, some sort of car or whatever. I seriously doubt they were pushing it around trying to push it into people, because people can easily move out of the way. So
it doesn't move fast at all.
Yeah, it doesn't move fast at all. So, but either way, if you're pushing around a dumpster that's on fire, you're looking to cause damage to something. Now, my assumption would be that if the people that were there with firearms were there to protect people and property, that they stopped them from doing so. Now, if you're walking around with a firearm and you're stopping somebody with a dumpster full, that's on fire, you're going to have to do it in some sort of forceful way, right? I don't know if it was in a physical way, meaning they actually put their hands on somebody to stop them from rolling the dumpster down the street, if they pointed their weapons at those people to get them to stop moving that dumpster. I would say it might have been a combination of the two, which is probably why, what's his name got,
Rosenbaum.
it's probably had that. Yeah, Rosenbaum. That's probably what helped initiate his angry tirade of, shoot me, somebody. So that's from listening to how you describe the time of the events. My initial reaction would be that's probably what happened in order to get Rosenbaum to react like that, or those people in general to react like that against the people who had the firearms.
Right.
So the people with firearms probably stopped them from doing.
Right. But just for clarity, the dumpster was stopped by a guy walking by with a fire extinguisher. And he literally, that thing had power, because it was like, and the whole fire was out. I was like, dang.
Right. Right. But then
but then something around there was a lot of confusion.
Right. Something. Right. And so maybe the guy who stopped the dumpster fire with a fire extinguisher, maybe the guys with weapons came to assist him, as in because what do you think the initial reaction would be to the guy who stopped the fire with the fire extinguisher? The people that were pushing it were probably not okay with that. I'm assuming they weren't okay with that.
No,
and so they may have
they definitely weren't.
They may have aggressed towards that guy, and maybe the guys with firearms came in to kind of provide that person with a little protection, right? So
yeah, they didn't aggress against the guy with the fire extinguisher, but what's happening on the other side of the extinguisher you can't see, and that's because it was puff of white, right? And then plus the dumpsters in the way, so you can't see what was going on that other side from that angle.
Right.
But yes, there's a bunch of stuff happening around here that you can't tell fully what's going on, and the origin of the dumpster. All you know is it came from the protester side. That you can't tell who lit it, and all you can see is Rosenbaum and
right.
one other guy is pushing.
And it's kind of a moot point, because now we've painted a picture of you've got a lot of people who are essentially initiating violence with a dumpster, a large object that's on fire. You've got another group of people who are essentially trying to stop that, type of behavior from happening. And then you've got some sort of altercation that happens between those two sides. And then we get to the whole, you know, we don't know who started it, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, now we get to the point where from that altercation, the 17-year-old is running away. So he's retreating or fleeing. And Jason, you know, Jason did a video of this where he talked about the fog of war. There's
Jason
so many
Staples.
things going on. Yeah, there's so many things going on. There's violent behavior going on all around you. There's verbal the things are escalating verbally, where, you know, if you have somebody that is walking up to a bunch of people with guns in a very aggressive, very angry way and saying, shoot me, his mental mind state is such that he's like, you have no idea what that person is capable of doing, because you have to be so outside your mind with disregard for your life to walk up to a bunch of people with guns and tell them to shoot you. Like, he's literally saying, shoot me. Not a rational
like
person does not walk up.
Yeah, like I'm hard.
You're hard, but that means that you're willing to go through a certain level of violence, right? So you're willing to have somebody. If you're willing to have somebody shoot you, and you're saying that over and over and over again, and that's the anger, that's the level of anger that you're portraying, then it's very reasonable to assume that if you're already that angry, that it's probably not going to take much for you to act violently towards somebody. So anyway, so we get to the part where Kyle's running away and he has something thrown at him. Now, you say it was a paper bag. It may have been a paper bag, but that paper bag flew pretty fast and pretty far. So there was something in it.
Yeah.
So
No,
I don't know if I don't know. Right. So something's in it. So you've got something heavy, whether it's in a paper bag or not, being thrown at you. I mean, now it might have been a full can of beer, like a 40 ounce or whatever, but still a large object or a heavy object, relatively heavy object, gets thrown at him in a paper bag or whatever. He's got people chasing him, right? He's got a gun. And so he's got people chasing him, and he knows he has a gun. So, and they know he has a gun. And he has things thrown at him. And then we get to this part where you can't really see what happens, but you've got the witness testimony that says that, the other guy grabbed his gun. Well, if you're grabbing somebody's gun and trying to remove it from them, you can reasonably assume at that point they're trying to grab your gun and possess your gun and potentially use your gun against you. So at the point where somebody is trying to disarm you of your weapon as you're fleeing them, you can reasonably assume that they already intend to do harm. So him shooting this person, whether I see it literally on video or not, at the point I've seen enough to determine that at least that it was self-defense at that point from what I've seen. Now, if something new comes out, like where it's actually like whole things on video and from a different angle something else comes up, then I reserve the right to change my mind. But from everything that I've seen, this part that we already talked about, this is clear self-defense. Right.
So one thing to add to the point where Kyle is starting to run through the parking lot and the bag is thrown and that sort of thing is throughout all the videos that I've seen, and I watched probably over an hour of all these different angles. There's a bunch of fireworks happening all night. Right. And I don't mean like pew, boom, boom, boom. No, I'm talking about like black cat, pop, pop, that sound like a gun. Right. And that's why I said when the dumpster fire stuff was happening, right before that, there was a really jittery dude. Like, I'll link you to the video, but he's like, like turning around like a toy soldier, right? Like legs spread apart, hand on his gun, like flipping around left to right because he's so freaking nervous because all he keeps hearing is all these pops and he doesn't know what's happening, right? So I give Kyle that benefit of the doubt in that, and even in the case of when he's running, there are pops, and I believe I'll take the reports as they are that there were shots. It wasn't fireworks. There were literal pistol shots that were happening at that point. You, in that scenario, you don't know what's happening, what's going on, and so I give credence to the fact that that would be self-defense, right? The point
Well,
of contention.
I think
Go ahead.
I think in his mind, and I mean, like I said, given the scenario that the picture that you're painting, if you have a bunch of fireworks, kind of pop stuff going on, from what I'm seeing, he's trying to remove himself from the situation. Like he's trying to get out of there, right? So if you have fireworks going off, you don't know if they're gunshots, you've got people chasing you, people are throwing stuff at you, you're retreating, you're trying to just get out of the freaking environment in the first place. Because everything that I've seen does not tell me that this guy just was going there to kill people, right? He's trying to get out of there, right? And now you've got this fog of war environment where all these things are happening around you, right? And all he's thinking is, this is just it's just crazier. It's crazier of a situation that he wants to be in. So he's trying to get away. Right. And then, I don't know whether or not those other pops were gunfire. I don't know how many times he shot his weapon. All I know is that at the point where he fired his weapon and killed and shot this guy in the head, there's enough for me to see that it was reasonable self-defense at that point. Now, once he left and started, removing himself from that situation, now he has people chasing him down because they didn't really know what happened, right? So now you have other people chasing him down, and then that's where this whole second half happened, where people caught up with him. He falls to the ground. You've got one guy that tries to hit him over the head with a skateboard. Another guy's trying to stomp his head in with his foot while he's on the ground. And then he shoots.
I think he does actually kick that. I think one guy actually does kick him.
Yeah, right. But you've got a ton of people around too. So there's a mob coming. They're saying, get him. Now that he's on the ground, so now he's on the ground, essentially defenseless outside of his weapon. People are saying, get him. You've got people running up to him, trying to hit him with skateboards, trying to kick his head in. And so he shoots another person, the guy with the skateboard, and then the other guy who happened to have a pistol on him tries to kick him, and he points the gun at him, and the guy backs off with his hands up. Kyle doesn't fire, and then he reattacks, and then that's when Kyle shoots him in the arm.
Yeah, so, that's the point that I don't understand what that third guy was doing. And I'm going to backtrack in a second, but that third guy, he did hesitate. His friend said on Facebook that the only thing that he regrets is not emptying a clip into Kyle. But he did hesitate and decided not to shoot. But from his actions, he takes a step to the right of Kyle. And I'm like, well, what were you trying to do? Walk by him? Like if you were going to attack, I don't see why you would step in that direction. But I mean, people do weird things in that moment, right? But
well, it looks like what he was doing is he was trying to when he initiated the attack on Kyle when he was on the ground. He wasn't trying to initiate it with his firearm. He initiated it first without his firearm. Once he had the firearm pointed at him, he backed up and then tried to reinitiate with his firearm, it looks like. And as he was either pulling it out or coming at Kyle, because he had the firearm in his hand whenever he got shot. So,
right, but no, he was definitely moving forward. But he's moving forward to the right, and his gun is in his right hand. And I'm like, if you were trying. I don't know. I mean,
Well,
people's
he doesn't
training
know
is
what he
different.
doesn't know he doesn't know what he's doing. Yeah, I mean, he
Right.
probably
There
didn't
you
know what
go.
he was doing.
Yeah.
Like somebody with extensive firearms training would have backed away as they drew and
Right.
shot.
That's
Right?
my
They
point
would not
exactly.
have.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have moved forward like that as they're pulling their firearm out. They would have created distance between themselves and drew and shot. Instead, this
Right.
guy probably had no concept of firearms manipulation or real any
I
kind
don't
of real
think so.
training. So.
I mean, did you see when he actually got shot, the way his hand was on the gun? I mean, well, not on the gun, but like where his hand was, like it was
No,
like out
I mean he was
extended, one
from what.
handed, right hand out. Like it
Yeah,
wasn't like
yeah.
tight couple. You know what I'm saying? Like it definitely didn't look like he had a lot of training with a weapon.
Well, I think he was a felon too, so I'm pretty sure he wasn't supposed to have the gun in the first place.
Well, that's part of his problem. Yes, is that his legal issues now is that yes, he did get shot. Yes, he did get quote unquote fame because his arm is now blown off now. But yeah, now he has a legal problem because he wasn't supposed to be.
Well, no, I'm saying he was a prior felon, so
Yes.
he wasn't supposed to have the gun in the first place. So,
right. So you
he
basically got
probably
two
doesn't
people
have a lot of firearms.
Yeah, you got two people who weren't supposed to have a gun. One that was too young, and one that was a prior convicted felon. And that's the two things that I think are going to hit both of them in this is that they're from a legality standpoint. But I'm not a lawyer, so I don't want to even try to dictate. But I will link to the Coleon Noir video, who is actually a lawyer and a gun enthusiast and looks at it from all those different angles, from legal and from gun management. And he breaks down, like from a legal aspect, what could possibly be, but we don't have all the information to fully know. The guy with the skateboard was actually the one that was hit in the chest, and he was the second guy. The guy in the arm, he was fine posting pictures on the internet after that, as like a badge of honor, which I don't even know why you would do that. Like if I lost a gunfight, I mean, I'm not going to put my wounds on.
It wasn't really even a gunfight. I mean,
you're right. It wasn't, but to the point where you didn't even get a shot off.
Right. Yeah. No. I mean, his badge of honor is he got his ass handed to him. Is what he did.
Yeah. So that's what is like weird to me. Like he's posting it like, yeah. And then the part for me, and this is where you and I disagreed on it, was the origin. And this is what I'm saying. We don't know specifically the origin of what happened between the gas station and Rosenbaum. We don't know specifically what happened there and who was the aggressor.
I don't need to know that. That's the thing. I don't need to know. It doesn't matter. Here's why it doesn't matter. Because at the point, it doesn't matter who aggressed against who first back then. Because at the point when Kyle decides that I'm removing myself from this situation and I'm running away and I'm going to leave, at the point where he's aggressed and is chased and has things thrown at him and has a weapon attempted to be pulled from his hands, all that stuff that happened with the dumpster fire and the gas station, that all goes away. That doesn't freaking matter anymore. He's leaving.
Not there.
He's
I'm
trying to remove himself. No.
I'm saying right before he starts running, right? Like the reason why that matters is if the story comes out and there's some video, somebody is shot and Kyle is actually like, I don't know, doing something aggressive towards Rosenbaum, right? Pointing the gun at Rosenbaum. And then he finally decides to take off because he doesn't want to kill somebody, right? At that point, Kyle was the aggressor that started this situation, right? Now, I'll agree with you that at the point that Rosenbaum has grabbed the gun and is trying to disarm him, Coleon Noir's point was that the aggressor flips and it can flip in an instant, and Rosenbaum is then the aggressor. I agree with you on that. I have no qualms with that whatsoever. My point is like what started it, right? And that's the point that we can't say Rosenbaum was the aggressor.
I don't care. I don't care because all I care about is whether or not this was a justified self-defense shooting. All the other stuff about why these people were there and who started this and who started that. Like, before we get to, like, all that stuff doesn't matter to me, right? At the point where I see this kid running away, trying to get himself out of the situation, right? And he has somebody violently chasing him and violently throwing things at him and then trying to take a weapon away from him. All I'm thinking is that justification for him to have taken that person's life? And the answer is clearly yes. Now, all the other stuff to me is moot, and it doesn't really matter, because I'm only worried about answering the question, was it justified self-defense? And all that stuff doesn't play into whether I think it's justified self-defense, because, like I said, at the point where he retreats and he leaves, right, and he's like removing himself from the situation, then he's being chased down, then it's self-defense. Now, you know, whether, you know, whoever started the argument and all that other stuff, it doesn't matter to me. So that's all I was trying to say, is that's kind of moot for me.
Right. So our disagreement came upon a point of saying that Rosenbaum was the aggressor and started this sort of mess. And so that's the only reason for that part of the discussion. The other part was with the, I forget their names, but skateboard guy and the guy that got shot in the arm. The point of them showing up to commit violence is the part that I take on with as well, is that you can't prove that they showed up to commit violence, right? Yes, they went after Kyle. Mob mentality kicked in. They went in to try to disarm someone that they heard had just killed somebody, right? So taking in the totality of that situation in the same sense of fog of war, they trying to be heroes, go out to go try to get this guy who just killed somebody. They don't know what happened. They don't know backstory. They don't know any of that sort of stuff. All they know is this dude running down the street with this gun killed somebody, and they're trying to stop him and disarm him, right? Whether smart or not, obviously it turned out not to be a great decision. Whether smart or not, to state that they went there to commit violence is wholly inaccurate, right? Because you don't have the facts. Well, I mean, I say inaccurate. You don't have the facts to make that sort of claim.
I have enough information based off of what I saw to make a rational judgment as to the nature of why they were there. Now, I could be wrong, right? Maybe they were there to sing Kumbaya and, you know, all is right with the world, and we should all love each other, and let's hold hands. I mean, yes, maybe you're right. I could be completely wrong, and they were just there trying to make the world a better place, and didn't want to do anything, you know, bad or illegal. Sure. You know, I could be completely wrong. But on the totality of the whole environment and situation, especially given their criminal backgrounds, I would say it's more likely that they were there to quote unquote protest and take part in any kind of, you know, violent action that may or may not have been started by either them or somebody else. Now, you know, I wasn't in their head, so I can't say, you're right, I can't say for certain one way or the other, but I'm looking at the whole environment and the whole scenario, and I'm looking at the fact that they tried causing great bodily harm or even death to somebody who was holding a weapon. And I'm going to say somebody who's willing to do that is more likely to have been there for not so peaceful motives. So yeah, I could be 100% wrong, and I don't have like 100% concrete proof, but you know, we all make judgments based off of the information that we have, and in my opinion, based off of my experience and everything that I saw, I'm easily making that conclusion. And I have no problems making that conclusion until I see something else. Show me a video. Show me a video of those two guys before all of this happened, calmly explaining why they were there to not be violent and to do peaceful protesting, just like Kyle was, where he was standing there being interviewed and is like, I'm here to provide medical assistance. And, I'm like, he clearly stated why he was there, to be peaceful and to provide assistance for people. So show me a video of those people saying that, and I'll be like, you know what? Maybe they were.
Right. So even without that, taking in prior past, prior art sort of thing, prior history, the protesters that were there, if we even go back to, if you watch the video of what was happening around the time of the dumpster thing at the place, when Rosenbaum was trying to push through the crowd, he was trying to push through protesters because the protesters were keeping him back, and people were saying, stop him, somebody get him under control. That was the protesters, right? So the idea that the protesters were all there, if you're a protester, you were there for the purpose of doing that, and you factor in their criminal past, you're saying, okay, based on your criminal past and you're a protester, you were likely there to, do something nefarious.
I'd say you're more likely, definitely more likely. Yes.
Right. All right. So then if we go by that measure, ignoring Kyle giving an interview where he's discussing what he's doing there, the week prior, Kyle was beating a woman in that fight that we looked at, right?
That's not what I saw.
He definitely hit on a woman. I don't know if you were looking at the
Okay,
right
I didn't.
dude.
So yeah, but
He was the one in the black shorts.
I don't know if he was quote unquote beating on a woman. I saw a fight that included many people, right? Many people throwing blows, and a lot of people grabbing people and throwing punches. I didn't see Kyle standing there with a woman right there on the other side, everybody just watching, and him throwing blows at some woman. I didn't see that at all. I saw the fog of war with a lot of people throwing blows at a lot of people, and he may have landed a couple on a female, but that looked like a high school fight where
it definitely was.
A lot of people were talking a lot of stuff and a lot of mess, and things escalated, and you had a lot of people getting into a brawl. But I've seen that a bunch of times. And I mean, that's high school stuff. So,
that's high school stuff.
That's nothing.
But it is physical violence. And Kyle absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt, was hitting the woman on purpose. It was not, I'm just throwing blows in the crowd. No, the girl was right in front of him and he was welling on her back. On the other side, had her in a headlock.
So what if she was, okay. So if she started swinging on him, right, mm-hmm. and then he defends himself, and then you've got a bunch of people who it seemed like they were on her side start swinging on you too, like, that wasn't the case. What are you supposed to?
Right, but that wasn't the case.
What wasn't the case? What wasn't the case?
A bunch of people swinging on Kyle. Kyle was free and clear on the backside of the brawl, and the girl had her back turned to him, and whoever the other person was had the girl kind of like in a headlock, kind of by the shoulder sort of thing, and Kyle was welling on this girl's back. I'll screenshot the specific parts. Initially, when I first saw it, I was looking at the wrong kid. I thought it was the kid in white. It wasn't. Kyle had on like these American, Crocs. And so you see those Crocs, you see him in the pictures beforehand, you see him with those. And that was Kyle absolutely swinging and welling on that girl. Follow that up, dudes pull up in a car, completely different angle and video of that. And they get out and they basically curb stomp this dude, right? Maybe 5 seconds or so. They hit him, he falls down, and they kick him a few times, and then they take off, cussing at him, blah, blah. Everybody gets in the car, everybody takes off, right? So taking that mindset 1 week before the shooting, it is very possible and very likely, based on his history, of that sort of violence that he could have been there for reasons that he did not state on that video. Now, at the point where he was there rendering aid, he had Overwatch. If you look on there, he had people on top of the building with their guns that were monitoring that whole situation, right? In my opinion, this is just me. If I were any of those guys that were there with the gun, I wouldn't have let him sit there and brandish the weapon anyway. Especially if I knew who he was, which his mother was. I saw a picture of her with the same shoulder strap, but I don't know if she was there that night. I know she dropped him off or drove him there, but I don't know if she was there. But I wouldn't have let my son be there with, knowing that it would have been illegal. If he wanted to render aid, I would have made sure I was there to protect him and be there by him, and I would have been the one with the weapon. But the larger point is that their criminal record, their criminal history has no bearing on the point of whether they went there for violence. You can make that assumption, feel free, but you can't outright state that that is a solid, fact-based, grounded situation, because if you don't apply that same to Kyle, then you're
okay. You need to rewatch this video. Okay, so here's what I see in the video of Kyle. Kyle and some girl in red pants are talking to this other girl. She's in slippers and pants and a long shirt. Now Kyle walks away. So again, Kyle walks away from the situation. Now the woman that Kyle was with approaches the other woman, and those two women get into a fight. Now, here's what happens. Some guy pulls Kyle's woman, the woman that Kyle was originally with, grabs her and tries pulling her away. I don't know if he was with her or what. And and so the girl is beating on the girl. The two girls are in a fight, and Kyle's essentially punching the girl that's hitting the girl that he was with. Maybe it was his girlfriend or a close friend. I don't know. But Kyle essentially.
Right?
Yes,
he's absolutely dwelling on that girl. No interruption, no crowd, nothing.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm not condoning hitting women, but if you feel like you're protecting your woman against another person, whether it's a woman or a man, then that's what it looks like is going through his mind. He's protecting the woman that he was with against another woman. Now he's throwing punches, and I don't condone beating women, but this isn't something that has anything to do, in my opinion, with Kyle's state of mind or the kind of person that Kyle is when it comes to this whole, defending yourself and shooting these people situation. That has nothing to do with anything. And the left media is using this as if like Kyle's a woman beater. And so it's obviously the kind of person he is. They would go and, kill two people and then gravely injure another one. Like to me, it doesn't have anything to do with anything. Like after I watched this video, like this other video doesn't mean anything to me. Like this is a high school. This is a high school fight
of the other people. The criminal records of the
that other is no. I don't agree with that at all.
Dude, the only difference is that Kyle hasn't been convicted of this fight. If this plays out and Kyle gets
because it's high school kids getting into a freaking fist fight. It's nothing. That's nothing. Sexual. Being a pedophile is way different. Being a pedophile is way different than two kids in high school or three kids in high school getting into a fight. Completely different. It's not even close to the same.
How old was Rosenbaum whenever he got the pedophile charge or the sexual assault or sexual misconduct with the minor? How old was he, and how old was the girl?
I don't know. That's a good question. I can look it up.
But this is what I'm saying. The right is using the exact same tactic that the left is using against Kyle. You don't know what he is, but they say he's a pedophile because it says sexual misconduct with a minor. Kyle was 18 at the time. Right? So Kyle 18, if the girl is 4 days shy of her birthday, that will get you that charge, and you will be considered a sexual predator from then. or whatever the term is, right? You have to register on the database, and everywhere you go, you have to tell them that this is the charge that you've had, right? I know a couple who has been married for 40 years, and the husband was charged with this. They've been married, but he was 17, she was 14.
Okay, sure, but
Right. So that's what I'm saying.
But Joseph Rosenbaum was convicted of a Class 3 felony child sex abuse conviction. So like, there are different levels. Yes, I will agree with you that.
I'm not.
I will agree with you that in some situations, like the legal system kind of, takes, you could interpret a quote unquote, a sexual offense differently. Like there are different classes of sexual offense, right? Yeah. Like if you're 17 or if you're 18 and your girlfriend's 17 and her parents find out that you had sex with her and now they want to charge you as an adult and now you're a sex offender, yes, that would be a different situation than, what a Class 3, felony when it comes to child sex abuse is concerned. So yeah, I agree with you. There are different levels of that.
Let me clarify so it's clear. I am in no way defending Joseph Rosenbaum, like in no way whatsoever. I looked at his record. The dude's record is crazy. Like he's had quite a few run-ins with the cops, a lot of financial problems. Like the dude just got some issues, right? And obviously he has some anger problems because of the way he was acting the night before he ended up getting shot. I mean, like you say, if you want to run up to a group of heavily armed people and you're not armed and you want to say, shoot me, yeah, there's something going on there, right? So I'm not defending that at all. What I'm saying is,
right, but all of that should show you that that person's mental state of mind means that they were more likely to commit violence than your regular person that's just kind of there to protest. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So you have to take all of those small things into totality, into consideration.
With Rosenbaum, if he was between the part that we don't know in terms of like what happened to make Kyle start running, it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Rosenbaum like pushed that and was like, you know what, there's one of those, cats with the gun, I'm going to go after him, and doesn't even like, there was no interaction. And I actually, for clarity, at the point where the dumpster and all that stuff at the gas station, I see a guy that has a shirt like Kyle, but I can't tell if that's Kyle. It looks a little too big. Kyle's not a big guy either. He's like 5'4" or something. So he's not much bigger than Rosenbaum. So it wouldn't surprise me one bit if Rosenbaum actually was the aggressor the entire time of that situation, right? What I'm saying is with the other two, bringing in their criminal record has no bearing on what they were doing there that night or their penchant for violence. It has no bearing.
But I don't see that. I don't think that's the case. I think it makes them more likely to have been there to commit. So I would say it like this. Let's say you take somebody who has never been convicted, never been arrested of anything in their life, 40 years old, goes to church every Sunday, has three kids, all, two of them in high school, one of them in, primary school, married, has a house or rents an apartment, and they're there protesting, right? I would say on a percentage and a likelihood basis, that person is far less likely, if not probably never going to actually act violently in a protest type situation. Now, if I flip that and I say, I'll take a person who's got one or two convictions that of a violent nature, mildly violent nature, who maybe doesn't have a job, and add a couple of other characteristics there, and say that person is probably more likely to commit violence in a protest or when a protest turns more into rioting type environment. So that's all I'm saying, is that given those characteristics about these people, I would say that it is more likely that they were there to commit violence if a violence started erupting, or to get to the point to where who's going to walk around. I mean, these things don't stay as protests. That's what everybody's really starting to figure out, right? These things aren't staying as protests. When you go somewhere at night and people are setting things on fire and people are getting, violently angry at other people, pushing them around, getting in their face, throwing things, these things aren't staying as like, we're just walking around, trying to get people to listen to us. Like, that's not how these things play out. And these people that are going there on a daily basis, they know that. So they're putting themselves in a situation where they know that the likelihood of things turning violent goes way up. And so given somebody's past and the things that they've done in the past, and they're putting themselves in a situation where the likelihood of violence goes up, in my mind, makes it much more likely that they're going there in the first place to commit violence or potentially commit violence when things start to get violent. And so that's all I'm saying. Right. I'm using my judgment based off of all the things that I've seen and know to make that conclusion. Now, I could be wrong, but something tells me that I'm not.
Right. So my only problem with it is that you don't apply that equally, right? You're taking the totality of the situation, the prior, convictions, without necessarily knowing what those cases are, and you're saying that they likely came there for violence. One dude the dude that got killed with the skateboard, he had a skateboard. Like, if you came there for violence with a skateboard, you're probably one of the worst people to be in a fight, because all you have is a skateboard.
Yeah, but you're mistaking. Here's the thing: you're mistaking violence for only physical violence. Okay, throwing things at anything, throwing things at a wall, correct, throwing things at glass, setting something on fire, right, getting in somebody's face aggressively, yelling, aggressive. Those are all levels of violence. Okay, you don't have to actually punch somebody in the face for you to be acting in a violent manner. Okay, so there's a big difference when it comes to the word violence and how it's being used when I'm using it. Okay,
right.
I don't mean that person came there and okay, great, because I want you to understand that I'm not arguing necessarily that person intentionally went there thinking I'm going to go punch somebody in the face tonight. Right. Right. So.
Yeah, we agree there. Right. So
okay,
there's levels. What I'm saying is that you're not applying that same to Kyle, in that we have now seen that Kyle will act violently towards someone else in the event
if he feels like he needs to defend himself.
He wasn't defending himself with that young lady. Right. Now, I get it. You stand up for your woman. There, we can, they'll probably pick apart what he should have done in that fight or whatever. I'm not worried about necessarily doing that. What I'm saying is that we've seen that Kyle has the penchant to commit violent acts, right? Every
human being has the potential to commit violent actions. You have the potential to do that.
In that moment, he decided, I'm going to punch instead of pull this woman back, right? He decided, I'm not going to break it up. I'm going to add to the violence, right? So you have to take that into consideration, right? So in that, then he also shows up with his gun while being surrounded by 40, 50 other people with guns. And he takes that, says he's there to render aid, right? But he's going there in the event that something pops off. He has his gun to be able to protect himself or property, which falls outside of the lines of being able to what's it?
Yeah, you can't use deadly force to protect property. Yeah.
Right. So all I'm saying is applying this equally would say we have somebody that we see that is willing to go this route, right? The other people, all you have is a criminal record. We don't have any video of them doing anything else that night. Well, at least that I've seen. I haven't seen any video of either one of those two anywhere that night. I don't know. And then you see that the guy with the skateboard comes after Kyle, and he pushes his girlfriend away and says, "Get out of here, run," and then goes after Kyle to try to disarm him. Turns out fatal. To be able to say at that point, well, he has a criminal record, so he probably showed up there to be violent, is like completely ignoring and just applying something to him that there's no basis for. Like if you don't even know what his criminal conviction was for, you don't know what the situation was about, and it's somebody that didn't get convicted that showed up there but was even more violent. Like let's say Rosenbaum didn't have any record at all, but he still acted the exact same that night. No record whatsoever. What does that say about it? Like, do you just still then say,
It wouldn't change my opinion at all. The guy was an idiot.
Right. So what I'm saying is, like, you have his actions there, right? The only action we have of skateboard guy and guy that got his arm shot was that they tried to stop a guy that they heard kill somebody. And that's it. You can't apply anything else to that because that's all that is. And we have the statement of the girlfriend of the skateboard guy who said,
okay, so you mean to tell me that you believe, that this skateboard guy and the other guy with the handgun, they just came out of nowhere and had no idea what was going on with any of these other people, hadn't been in the area, hadn't seen Kyle at all. That was the first time they had seen or heard of Kyle. They just kind of popped into existence when this whole shooting happened. It was like, that guy shot somebody. We've never seen him before. We haven't been here for the last 45 minutes or an hour and a half. We haven't seen anybody that's been involved in any of the situations so far. We're going to go run after him because he shot somebody, and we just kind of came out of nowhere and saw this happen, and we're going to go do the right thing and chase this guy down because we don't know who this guy is, and we don't know what he was doing, but we just know that he shot somebody. That's what you're saying.
no,
okay, that's what you
that's
think
not
happened.
what I'm saying.
Because that's not at all what I think happened. I think those guys.
That's not at all what I'm saying either. That's not a great steel man of my argument. My argument is that when Kyle ran down the street, they were not at that point doing anything towards Kyle or anyone else, right? We have video footage to show they were not. And yes, they were walking down the street. Then they hear he just shot somebody, and there's people running after Kyle. The guy with the camera is also running. When I say after, I mean like down the street in the same direction as Kyle. And they're yelling, and it's starting to popcorn, right? Like somebody says, he just shot somebody. Somebody else, hey, he just killed somebody, and it starts popping. And then somebody says, get his A. That's when you see people going after Kyle. Prior to that, prior to all the yelling, you don't see those guys in that footage at all going after Kyle or anything. Kyle actually runs past them. The people that came out, the guy with the gun that got shot in the arm was behind Kyle. Kyle had passed him already. Right. And if the guy with the skateboard, when he comes out, same thing. Right. So I'm not saying that what they did or what they didn't do that night prior to that moment in time. We don't know what they did. That's all I'm saying. We don't know what they did. So to try to say that they went there to be violent, you just can't do that. You can't do that at all. There's no evidence that proved that they went there to be violent, because there's plenty of evidence that shows like multiple protesters out there trying to prevent violence, trying to stop people from their own side and trying to break up any arguments, any issue. Stop doing this. What are you doing? Get back. Don't do this. Even with Rosenbaum, with others, there's a guy who throws a freaking sign towards the guys with the guns, and then he takes off running. Complete coward, dude. And he tries to throw like a cone or something at him as well. Complete coward, dude. Complete coward, right? But there are people that are telling these people from the protester side to stop. So this is all I'm saying. You can't say because they are on the protester side that they are inherently there to be violent. And you can't say that up to that moment of when Kyle shot them, that they were completely there to be violent and that their criminal record proves it. I can
definitely say that there's more of a likelihood that was the case and they were just there to be happy-go-lucky protesters. I can definitely say that. And
I can definitely say that Kyle went there with an AR purposefully as a Trump supporter to combat anybody that came in the area to try to mess with that store. That if somebody walked up and tried to vandalize that store, that Kyle was there and Kyle would have committed harm. I could say that just by throwing out all these random information about him being a Trumper and Trump saying people need to stop them and this blah 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 blah.
I'm not bringing politics into it. Bringing Trump.
I'm just saying, like,
Trump into it is
it's not Trump.
Different.
It's him following
I'm not saying
Trump.
that these guys were Joe Biden supporters who were, liberal freaking communists out there trying to like destroy the destroy the community. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that at all. Okay, all I'm saying is that given the totality of everything that I saw, there's definitely more of a likelihood that those people showed up with an intention to act out violently if violence was occurring.
Which is the same thing I'm saying about Kyle. That he showed up if violence was occurring, he was there to act out violently.
Okay, well, there's something that there's something to be said for justified versus unjustified violence. So,
correct.
Whether you believe Kyle using violence to protect himself or protect others or protect property, right? And I'm not talking about deadly force, but like let's just say Kyle wasn't there with a gun. Let's just say he was just standing there, and it was his uncle's shop or whatever,
right? And
he wanted to physically, act physically violent against people that were trying to damage, somebody's shop that he knows. Like there are different levels of violence. So at what point is it justified to use violence? At what point is it not justified to use violence? I would argue that it's not justified to use violence when you're destroying somebody's business, or you're lighting things on fire that shouldn't be lit on fire, or you're throwing things that shouldn't be thrown, or you're damaging property or whatever. Like that's an unjustified form of violence. Now, if you're trying to protect somebody from somebody else causing harm to person or property, then that would be a form of justified violence. So if you're going to say that Kyle showed up with the intention to commit violence in order to protect somebody or something, then I would say I don't see a problem with that type of violence. Now, is it legal in certain instances is to use, like you said, deadly force to protect property? No, it's not. But these are all side conversations. The whole situation is really boils down to was this justified self-defense given everything that you can see? And I say yes.
Yeah, and just straight up, it wouldn't shock me at all if it comes out as like once they have all the evidence. There's so many people walking around with cameras that I don't see how unless people just aren't openly providing the information, I don't see how they don't have footage from everything. I mean, there are like documentarian type people walking around with like cameras on shoulder type stuff, right? Like big cameras where they're clearly getting footage, for whatever their purpose is, right? And then plus all the cell phone cameras, all this sort of stuff, right? So there's plenty of stuff. So it could come out completely that Kyle is there. But to your definition that you just stated, skateboard dude and dude that got shot in the arm, they were using justified violence because what they thought at that time when things were popping off, that Kyle was dangerous to those that were around. Whether or not, I wouldn't have thought so because he's running away, but whether or not that was the case, mob mentality took over, and what turned out was tragic.
I just don't think that. I don't think that. You would have to believe. You would have to believe that they were so unintelligent. They were unintelligent enough not to know the difference, right? So
between
if you believe that Kyle wasn't running around shooting people at random, okay? He shot somebody, right? And somebody that I'm assuming at this point, from what I understand, that these two guys didn't even know, right? So
they were from different areas, so I don't think so.
It does, yeah, right. So here's the scenario is some guy who these two random people didn't even know gets shot by somebody else who isn't shooting anybody else, right? Isn't shooting anybody. He's not running around just mass shooting people, right? And then this person runs away. They're like Superman, save the world mentality kicks in, and they're like, we need to stop this guy. He's not shooting anybody else. We shot a guy. We didn't even see what happened, and we don't even know, and we're going to go stop this guy, right? Or they're just, right? I mean, that's what you would have to believe happened in their mind, or they were just so dumb that they didn't understand, like, you know, maybe we shouldn't run up to a guy with a gun and, you know, attack him and try and bash his head in with a skateboard and with our foot stop him into the ground like that.
Right. So those two parallels, it's not black and white. Those two parallels, there's in between, right? And just the same fog of war that you want to apply to Kyle, which I do as well, not trying to paint it like it's an incorrect thing. That same fog of war is happening to those individuals that tried to stop Kyle. All that's happening to them is that they're screaming about he just killed somebody. He's running down the street. And yeah, like there are people, absolutely. And from the statement of the girlfriend, that's exactly what skateboard dude went to do. That literally is what he went to do. He heard that somebody got shot, doesn't know who. He just heard that this guy just killed somebody. And from you, I would say this, from what I know of you, if you are in the crowd and you hear somebody just got through killing somebody and they're running right by you, I would not be surprised, Mike, if you went out there to disarm that dude. You probably would be armed, and that would change the the tactics of it, right? You would approach it differently, I would think. But in that same fog of war exists, right? So I don't know what those guys. I don't know how smart they are. I don't know how dumb they are. I'm just saying that in that moment, I can understand.
You have to take the totality of the environment. If I was just walking, but that's what I'm saying. Given the totality of the environment, I don't believe that these two guys just went into Superman mode and went and freaking chased this guy down and tried stomping his head in because, you know, they wanted to save everybody. Like, that's just not. I don't see any reason to believe that.
Hey, I mean, it could be that, or it could be that they violent outrage, right? Like, this guy just killed somebody. I'm going to go and inflict bodily harm on this guy, right? Like, it could definitely
be. Which goes back to what I was saying. They're idiots. They're idiots.
Yeah, I mean, so, I wouldn't disagree if that was their.
They're not the sharpest tool in the shed, obviously.
If that was their intention, so, I would say yes. I just don't know. But that's my only point. We don't know. So to make a judgment and say that, you know, they did it specifically for violence because they had a record in the past, man, I just believe too much in redemption. I've seen it too much. I know too many people who have been convicted. I know too many people who have different kind of records that I don't pass judgment on people based on their record is all I'm saying. And
it doesn't mean that I would pass that same judgment on every single person who has a criminal record. That's the thing. It's a thing that I can use to add to the totality of circumstances and environment and come to a reasonable conclusion based off of all the information that I have. Right? That's the difference. Okay,
I agree,
and that's why let's say if I took a priest and the priest was there and the priest, you know, had never done anything wrong in his life and, you know, upstanding person in society and just like, you know, I mean, you can fairy dust as many characteristics as you want, but you have to add them all up, and the sum of all of those things is either going to point you to a conclusion, a more likely conclusion, or a less likely conclusion. And so we obviously lined up in different spots, but, you know, I have my experience and you have your experience, and my experience tells me one thing and yours tells you a different thing.
Right. Yeah. And largely, and this is the last part I'll make about it, is that it's my general constitution based on seeing how the system works too much. I guess you would say secondhand. So not necessarily up close because I haven't been in the system, but seeing how the system works and how it can put people in certain positions to where they're now labeled, right? But then you have other people like the old serial killer, Sam Smithers, who was a deacon, great upstanding guy in the community, had a family, guy next door. They called him the deacon of death because he was a serial killer who had all those years never been convicted. And so that's largely my point, is that based on that criminal history, you don't know, and lack of a criminal history doesn't necessarily tell us either. But I'll transition to this one thing. I know we're going a little bit long, but I mean, hey, we knew we were going to get into it. So
yeah.
The fallout from this. So I know I asked you earlier if you were following Portland, and I'll give a brief synopsis of Portland. Portland, there was a protest that went on. It definitely, as you stated, at night turned into a riot. There's one video that completely angered me earlier. I mean, without a shadow of a doubt, there should be some arrest. This old man or older gentleman, maybe 60s, 70s, was trying to protect his business, spraying people with a fire extinguisher, and not like in their face, but just like get out of here. And a dude ran up and rocked him. I mean, completely rocked him. I mean, it completely angered me, bro. Like, straight up, like, find him, convict him. Like, this, without a shadow of a doubt, that dude is foul. On the flip side of that, there's a MAGA dude. There's a MAGA, what do you call it, parade. And the MAGA parade is going on, and the trucks basically is like, I don't know, they said something like 600 trucks or something, like something crazy. And so it was a big turnout, right, of all the MAGA people. And they basically ended up getting into confrontations. And there was a guy from the MAGA side that one guy was recording, another guy came by and knocked the phone out of his hand, bop, hit him a couple times. And then this big old rocked up dude just ran and blasted dude. And so it's like all this violence. And so what it seems like, and this is where I'm going with this, is it seems like the Rittenhouse thing, it obviously there's sides of this thing where Rittenhouse is MAGA. So MAGA is going to support him no matter what. He's MAGA. So the other side is not. They're going to say, well, no matter what, he's guilty, right? But it seems like that may be a spark to other people, like, well, not necessarily call to arms, but maybe so, where now other people start going out in these protests and it's like, you know what? Kyle did it. I'm going to do it. What do you think in terms of how this may play out? Not necessarily, and let me clarify, not Kyle killed people, so I'm going to go kill people. Just Kyle went out and protected property. I'm going to go out and protect property, which may lead to death. And there was a killing of, they said it was a Trump supporter that got killed in Portland last night. And I don't know any of the facts, don't have any video, any of that sort of thing. But do you think this is a spark, a point in time that triggers something else?
John, you and I have we've had way too many of these conversations about how the system is disintegrating before our very eyes and has been for years, right. and how things are going to get worse, and how the divide that is going on in the country right now is such where these types of things, these microcosms, these Rittenhouse situations and the protests and the riots, which are fueling a certain type of anger within a certain segment of the population who isn't going to put up with their communities being burned and rioted forever, and
right.
People are eventually going to defend their property and defend their communities with violence if necessary. Like, these things are boiling to a point where we get somebody like Rittenhouse, and we'll probably get another one. Probably have another one in the future. Whether it was Rittenhouse or somebody else, doesn't really matter. Like, the system is disintegrating, and sides are, the left right now, or what the right would call the left, right? The violent communist freaking contingent that is essentially trying to destroy this country right now with riots and looting. right, is fueling a flame on what you would call the right, that is eventually going to boil over, where people just aren't going to take it anymore. People aren't going to take the looting. People aren't going to take the rioting. People will defend themselves. People will defend their property, whether it's a 17-year-old kid or a 27-year-old person, right, with a gun. It doesn't really matter. We're getting to the point now, right, where time has played out to the point to where now people are essentially shooting people to defend themselves because they're out there thinking they need to defend their community, right? So it's going to get worse. Like, it's going to get worse. The system is set up to fall apart, right? We've had this conversation before. The system is set up to disintegrate. So yes, I mean, whether Rittenhouse is the spark or another person is the spark, there's going to be sparks. So,
and
sit back and wait.
Right. I think I didn't see. So thinking of like George Floyd, that was the spark, right? That kicked off. I mean,
that was a spark.
3 months. Yeah, it was a spark. Right. But it was like the final straw, right? That ended up like sparking all this sort of stuff. Right. And that's when, Minnesota kicked off and all this violence, riots, and then just countrywide, it just like boom, 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 like popcorn. And so I was just curious, man. I'm wondering if Rittenhouse is going to be that spark for the right. We've kind of seen like some passive, like we're just going to come out and kind of show force. And then we've seen some violence from the right that have been, pushed on from the left, and violence from the left. And it's like all these different sides. I mean, I was just thinking about it. I was like, I didn't think about would there be a spark from the right that would trigger them to be more aggressive or not. But Portland definitely is in a bad shape right now. Is in a bad shape.
I think as this thing has played out, the spark that the spark that you're talking about that may come from the right will be justified use of deadly force in situations where people who find themselves on the right are trying to do what they think is the right thing, meaning protect people and property. Because before, I think most of the stuff that I've seen before has been solely show of force. People out there with guns, standing there, not letting people do things that they would have done if those people with guns weren't there, right? And things kind of not escalating to the point to where people have to get shot. But at the point where we're at now, where things are escalating to the point to where those people are doing that, and then violence is being enacted on those people who feel like they're being righteous and protecting property and persons, that violence is causing them to feel like they are justified in self-defense in using deadly force. I think that might spark the likelihood of that happening more. Meaning, like, okay, I'm on the right, I'm doing the right thing. We're out here more and more trying to protect people and property from riots and looting. And now I'm in a situation where, I feel like my life is threatened, so I have to use deadly force. Now,
right.
The only reason why I think Rittenhouse is going to get away with it, or not even get away with it is the right, terminology, but I think be exonerated for
murder, not be charged with, I think, first degree murder, right?
Right. Is because you could see that he was actively trying to remove himself from the situation and protect himself from aggressive, violent action towards him. So I think if we get scenarios where, let's say, you're standing in front of a building and you're protecting some property or people inside, and somebody just kind of walks up to you and is being aggressive towards you, and then boom, that person gets shot simply because they were like walking up to you and yelling at you. That's a completely different scenario that, in my mind, wouldn't be justified, and that type of thing might spark, something else. But this type of thing, where I think it is clear cut, as far as I can tell, self-defense, I don't think it's gonna, I don't think it's going to change a whole lot other than telling people who are on the right, hey, it's okay. It's actually okay to defend yourself, right? It's okay to do the right thing and defend persons and property in your community. And if your life is threatened and you take somebody's life in defense of your life while in defense of persons and property, and you aren't convicted of murder, then, that's actually a good thing. I mean, it's a good thing, right? Because
Right.
I do think that communities should be able to protect themselves from this kind of fascism. I mean, really, this is crazy. This is crazy, violent behavior. I mean, you have people from all sorts of. You have people from outside communities coming into inside communities and destroying things,
Yep.
right? I mean, you even have people coming into neighborhoods destroying things at this point. So
you got them building guillotines in front of
Jeff Bezos' house. Yeah.
Man, hey, I honestly, I thought that was a joke when I heard about it, but no, some people really did it. But no, I definitely agree with you, and I think there's, I think it's definitely you're gonna have to watch what happens, because one way or another, one side's gonna cry about injustice, no matter what happens with Rittenhouse. If he gets off, if he gets convicted, that could end up sparking more issues, right? Could be more protest or whatever. But they've raised like $100,000 for his defense already on one of the websites. But we'll see, man. We'll see what happens with the legal case. I don't pretend to play a lawyer on TV, so I have no idea what they'll end up doing. I just think his biggest charge right now is that he was 17 with a gun and actually used deadly force. I don't know what that means legally there. I couldn't really tell you, but we'll see. I mean, I could see arguments that his lawyer could make to say, if he found the gun on the ground while he was there and picked it up and protected himself, like, would that be different? Right. I don't know. I have no idea. But rest assured, people are going to be tuned in to figure out how mad they want to be at the verdict. I can guarantee that. But I do think it's going to be interesting, man. There's definitely a lot changing right now. There's a lot happening. I really wish they would stop all the violent stuff. Like, it's not. I heard one girl in Portland saying, telling somebody's like, look, man, the dude told him, go deal with the police. Like, nobody in these businesses killed, messed with, or harmed y'all. And the girl was like, this was a state building, and, like, just completely illogical arguments about why they were destroying stuff and saying that, we bought and paid for this insurance company over here that got burned down. Like, we paid for that. And I'm like, what kind of logical, this groupthink stuff just doesn't work for me, man. I just can't do that. And so I really wish they would stop it and just, deal with the protests all day, all freaking day. But when you start destroying stuff and all this other unrest, it's harmful. So great episode though, Mike. I enjoy debating with you, bro. It's always fun.
Always, brother. Always.
But yeah,
we got love either way.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. But see, this is what I tell people all the time. You got to be able to have these conversations and not storm off and cut folks off. Like, you just got to have these conversations, man. We learn stuff from each other all the time. But catch us on politicalfreeagents.com, at PFA Podcast on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Hit us up on YouTube. Hit like, subscribe, so that you know whenever we show up. And mad kudos and props to whoever listened to this entire episode. You are a G. All right, we out.